I looked through the phone directory. I did find a Michael DeSanta, about the right age, married with 2 kids.
What's his wife's name?
Amanda?
Amanda!
Yeah.
You're a genius, you moron! Come on, come here! Woo! Don't you ever not tell me things I want to know!
Sorry, Trevor.
Welcome back to the channel, folks. So GTA 6 got delayed again, and at this point, by the time it finally drops, it'll have been nearly 13 years since Grand Theft Auto 5 first launched back in 2013. Sure, GTA Online has kept the franchise alive with constant content updates, roleplay servers, and shark card sales keeping Rockstar more than comfortable, but when you really think about it, it's over a decade without a brand new single-player GTA experience. And it raises a pretty obvious question: why hasn't anything else stepped up to fill that gap? Why in 2025 isn't there a clear, definitive alternative to Grand Theft Auto? You'd think by now some studio would have cracked the code. I mean, this is one of the most successful and influential franchises of all time. And yet no one has truly managed to match its mix of sandbox chaos, storytelling, satire, and polish. Plenty of games have borrowed pieces of the formula, but nothing's really taken the crown. And that's weird, because if we go back in time a bit, that wasn't always the case. Back in the 6th generation and early into the 7th, think PS2 and Xbox into the 360 and PS3 era, GTA was at its peak, and you saw a lot of other games trying to ride those coattails. Everybody wanted a slice of that open world crime-themed pie. You had Driver 3 trying to recapture the vibe with a clunky story mode and barely there gunplay. There was Scarface, The World Is Yours, where he literally took over Miami as Tony Montana himself, in an alternate universe where he survives the mansion shootout. And then there was The Godfather, which let you rise through the ranks of the Corleone family in a surprisingly solid little mob sandbox. None of them were perfect, while some were complete disasters, but there was a charm to those games. They were rough, yeah, but they had personality. They weren't trying to be better than GTA, just different enough to stand out. You could tell the devs were having fun with the concept, even if they never hit the same highs as something like San Andreas or Vice City. They offered their own spins on the formula, and at the very least gave us some fun weekend rentals. But fast forward to now and the landscape is different. Studios are more risk averse, budgets are bloated, and chasing that GTA magic just isn't as common anymore. So today we're going to take a look at the modern landscape of GTA clones, or GTA likes, or open sandbox crime sims, whatever the hell you want to call the genre. And look at those few proud titles from the past decade that actually do scratch that crime sim sandbox itch. The ones that come closest to answering the question, what's the best alternative to Grand Theft Auto in 2025? So what exactly makes a game a GTA clone or GTA-like anyway? The term gets thrown around a lot, but it really boils down to a specific style of open-world, crime-driven gameplay that Grand Theft Auto helped define. At its core, you're looking at a large, explorable city, or groups of cities, packed with things to do beyond just the main story. Whether you're driving across town to trigger a mission, picking up side gigs like street racing or bounty hunting, or just messing around with the sandbox for the hell of it, that sense of freedom is what defines the genre. It can be either third person or first person, but driving around and interacting with the world is essential. A solid GTA-like gives you some level of character customization, even if it's just changing outfits or cars, and ideally lets you approach objectives with a bit of flexibility. Want to go in loud or take a stealthier route? Steal a tank and cause chaos before a mission, or obey traffic laws just for fun? That's the spirit of the genre. It's that combination of open-world exploration, crime-themed missions, a bit of RPG-like flavor, and the ability to waste time however you want that makes these games so addictive. For this video, I'm mostly focusing on games that came out around the time Grand Theft Auto 5 released in 2013, or sometime after. This isn't a ranked list, it's more like a spotlight on the few titles that tried to walk the same path. Each one offers something that scratches part of that GTA itch. None of these games ever really had a shot at dethroning GTA, let's be honest, but that's not the point. What's interesting is looking at what each one did to stand out, what new ideas they brought to the table, and why, despite their strengths, they never became the go-to alternative. I've reviewed most of these games already, except the last two, so I'll link those videos down below if you want my more in-depth takes on each one. Now, what better game to start with than the one that seemed like it could have been that real alternative? The game that was hyped as the next GTA before it launched, Ubisoft's Watch Dogs. Released in 2014, just a few months after GTA 5 hit PS3 and Xbox 360, this was the game that promised to redefine what open-world crime sims could look like on 8th generation hardware. Set in a near-future version of Chicago, the game follows Aiden Pierce, a trenchcoat-wearing hacker vigilante who uses his smartphone to manipulate the city's infrastructure. After a botched job leads to the death of his niece, Aiden launches a personal crusade for revenge, using his access to Chicago's massive surveillance network to track down those responsible. On paper, that premise sounds sick, an anti-hero using guns and tech to fight the city's criminal underworld. He's joined by a cast of interesting characters with their own motives in helping Aiden, like Jordy, a laid-back fixer with zero morality, and Clara, a DedSec hacker seeking redemption from her past by helping Aiden. But here's where reality starts to crack. Watch Dogs was the next-gen game at E3 2012. The demo blew people away. Stunning graphics, realistic rain and lighting, dynamic physics, and gameplay that suggested a deep, reactive world where you could control nearly everything with the press of a button. This was supposed to be the future, but when it finally launched, we all realized something familiar had happened. In classic Ubisoft fashion, the game had been massively oversold. Graphics were downgraded, the environment wasn't nearly as interactive as it appeared, and the hacking, while cool, was more like a fun gimmick than a truly revolutionary system. Now don't get me wrong, the game isn't bad, there's plenty to like. It reviewed well, sold like crazy, and had a solid enough foundation that it led to multiple sequels. But a lot of us walked away from it underwhelmed. I actually picked it up on day one, and played through most of the game, and then just kinda moved on. I reviewed the game over a year ago, link down below, and honestly I walked away feeling pretty much the same as I did back then. Still underwhelmed by the story, but with a new appreciation for some of the stuff it did get right. Chicago looked great, the hacking gave you some extra creativity in combat, and stealth, and I liked a lot of the supporting cast. But the story, it felt too by the numbers. And Aiden? Man, he's the human equivalent of beige wallpaper. The biggest letdown for me was how much the story wasted its potential. It set up this interesting conflict around surveillance, privacy, and the dangers of unchecked tech, stuff that's more relevant now than ever, and then just boiled it all down to a generic revenge plot. Aiden's whole personality starts and ends with him being mad that his niece died. And instead of exploring any growth or nuance, the game just keeps hitting that same emotional beat. It feels like it wanted to say something big about our relationship with tech, but pulled its punches. But as a GTA alternative, Watch Dogs gets a lot right. The city is big and detailed, there's plenty of side content, from criminal convoys to optional gang hideouts and CTOS towers, and the driving, while a bit floaty, gets the job done. You've got shootouts, stealth options, chases, carjacking, even a notoriety system that changes how civilians react to you depending on your rep. It checks a lot of the same boxes as GTA. You can free roam, blow stuff up, buy outfits, mess with pedestrians, and explore a dense urban sandbox. And hey, you can call in your cars with your phone like Saints Row, no need to park them in a garage. Where it really differentiates itself is the hacking, being able to manipulate the environment in real time, like changing traffic signals, raising bridges, triggering steam pipes, or taking out enemies with fuse boxes adds a unique layer to missions. And while I'm not usually a fan of PvP, I do actually like its invasion mechanic. The idea is simple. Another player can invade your game, start stealing data from you, and you've got to track them down before they finish hacking and you lose some money. It becomes this tense little game of hide and seek where you have to use your wits, tools, and a sharp eye to catch the invader before time runs out. But the first Watch Dogs never quite nailed its identity. It gave us a playground of possibilities, but most of those ideas felt undercooked. And while the game had promise, it didn't leave the kind of lasting impact GTA does. That's the recurring theme you'll see in this video. Games that got close to what makes GTA so special, but couldn't quite pull everything together. Still, as far as modern GTA likes go, Watch Dogs is one of the stronger ones. It laid the groundwork for its sequels, especially Watch Dogs 2, to improve on just about everything. Still, the first game does offer a decent experience. A fun sandbox with a few good ideas, a cool setting, and while I didn't click with Aiden, I can understand why others like him. It's had a resurgence as of late on PC, thanks to dedicated fans modding and reworking the game. The Living City mod has revitalized the experience, adding new missions, random events, expanded hacking options, and even restored cut content, basically turning Watch Dogs into the open world crime sim it always wanted to be. It's not perfect, but if the vanilla game didn't quite click with you, the modded version just might. I'll link the mod down below if you want to check it out. Following up on the original Watch Dogs, Ubisoft pivoted hard with Watch Dogs 2 in 2016. Gone was the rainy, brooding trenchcoat energy of Aiden Pierce in gloomy Chicago. Instead, we got the sunny, colorful tech hub of San Francisco. And a brand new lead, Marcus Holloway. And I'll be honest, Marcus is way more likable than Aiden ever was. He's fun and charismatic. The whole game takes a lighter, more playful tone, trading the noir revenge story for goofy hacker antics and taking down big tech. On the gameplay front, Watch Dogs 2 improves on almost everything the first game tried to do. The hacking is better, you have much better options and tools to experiment with, the open world is brighter, livelier, more fun to explore, and with better side content. What I appreciated most was how much freedom you're given and how you approach objectives. You can go in guns blazing, sneak through with only gadgets and hacks, or even play the entire game as a pacifist and never kill a single enemy. That level of choice gives the player way more ownership over how they play. Thematically, Watch Dogs 2 sticks to the series' interest in the dangers of big tech, surveillance, data mining, social engineering, but presents it through a millennial lens. Instead of a lone vigilante fighting the system, you've got a scrappy group of hacktivists pulling elaborate stunts to take down shady tech giants. Marcus and his crew are young, idealistic, and constantly cracking jokes, which makes the tone feel fresher, though not always in a good way. The shift might be a bit much for players who like the dark vibe of the first game. There's a lot of personality here, but not all of it lands. Sometimes Marcus and his friends come off as a little too try-hard, and just straight up annoying. I like DedSec, but they can come off as shallow characters. The story lacks the cohesive narrative of the first game, and tends to loop. Find a corrupt tech company, hack into their secrets, leak the dirt, move on to the next one. It's fun, but it never really escalates or hit those heavy, high-stake moments that keep you on edge. Dushan, the main villain, plays the role of an evil tech bro pretty well, but he lacks that extra layer of menace or depth that makes a truly great antagonist. Still, I'd argue Watch Dogs 2 is the better game. It's more fun to play, the world is more inviting, and Marcus is easier to root for. But it also feels like Ubisoft overcorrected. In trying to completely distance themselves from the criticisms of the first game, they swung too far in the opposite direction. I think the game would have hit harder if it found some middle ground, kept the charm and charisma of Marcus, but gave him a real arc. Let him start off idealistic, then force him to confront the harsh reality of fighting systems of power. Let him grow and get his hands dirty. Instead, he kinda coasts through the story unchanged. So yeah, Watch Dogs 2 nails the GTA-like formula from a gameplay perspective. It's got the city, the side content, the freedom, and the crime sim mayhem, even if it's more digital rebellion than street gang warfare. But story-wise, it plays it too safe, and for a series built on exposing the dark side of technology, playing it safe kind of undermines the whole message. Out of all the games on this list, I think Sleeping Dogs might just be the best alternative to GTA. Originally developed as a spiritual successor to the True Crime series before getting picked up and rebranded by Square Enix, Sleeping Dogs took the familiar open-world crime formula and gave it a fresh spin. You play as Wei Shen, an undercover cop who returns to Hong Kong to infiltrate the Sunan Yi Triad. From the very first mission, it's clear that it isn't trying to be GTA, and trying to do its own thing. For starters, you're a cop, not a criminal. That immediately changes the dynamic. Wei's whole arc centers on this internal conflict, balancing his duty as a police officer with the loyalty and relationships he builds within the Triad. The lines blur constantly, and it makes for a much more morally complex story. You're not just stealing cars and climbing a criminal empire, you're trying to maintain your cover while watching your own identities start to slip. The game even reflects this in its leveling system, where you can earn experience separately for cop and Triad actions. Do your job cleanly and you gain new policing abilities, but give in to your violent instincts and you unlock brutal Triad skills. Setting the game in Hong Kong was another smart move. While most GTA-likes go with fictional takes on American cities, Sleeping Dogs gives you a vibrant, neon-drenched world that feels distinct and alive. The narrow alleyways, high-rise apartments, and bustling markets give it a personality that's completely different from the typical LA or New York City clone. There's a ton of side content, from street races to martial arts clubs to karaoke bars, and most of it actually feels worth doing. Combat is another area where Sleeping Dogs excels. Unlike GTA, which mostly sticks to shooting, this game puts a huge focus on melee combat. You'll be stringing together combos, countering enemy attacks, and using the environment to finish people off. Think Arkham-style brawling mixed with John Woo-style gunplay. The third-person shooting isn't groundbreaking, but it gets the job done. The story plays out like a high-octane Chinese action film, with memorable set pieces and strong supporting characters. And for the most part, the villains are great too. Dog Eyes is probably one of the scummiest assholes in all of gaming. My only complaints, the story wraps up a little too quickly, Big Smile Lee feels a bit weak as a final boss, and yeah, the game's a little too easy. But those are nitpicks more than real flaws. Honestly, I said as much in my review, linked down below, but I really don't have much bad to say about Sleeping Dogs. The only reason it didn't become a breakout franchise is because it didn't reinvent the wheel. It's a jack-of-all-trades kind of game. It does a lot really well, but maybe nothing quite at the elite level of Rockstar's best work. If you put it side by side with GTA 4 or 5, sure, it might be a little dated or less polished. But despite all that, I actually like Sleeping Dogs more than GTA 5. It's one of those games that nailed the landing on its first try. With a bigger budget or a sequel to refine what worked, I think it could have become something huge. But it didn't hit the sales numbers Square Enix wanted, so we never got that follow-up. And while I don't blame Square for picking it up when no one else would, it still sucks that Sleeping Dogs never got the second chance it absolutely deserved. If there's one game from this list I think you need to check out, it's this one. Criminally Underrated doesn't even begin to cover it. When people bring up the Mafia series as a GTA alternative, they're usually talking about Mafia 2 or the definitive edition of the first game. And don't get me wrong, those are solid titles, but they're more like linear action adventures with open world flavor than true sandbox crime sins. If we're sticking to games that really try to follow the GTA formula, Mafia 3 is the one that fits best. It's got the open world, the driving, the shooting, the empire building, and a well-written story. Unfortunately, it also comes up short in some key areas. Set in 1968 in the fictional city of New Bordeaux, which is basically a stylized New Orleans, you play as Lincoln Clay, a black Vietnam War veteran returning home and trying to find his place in the world. After a brutal betrayal leaves his surrogate family dead, Lincoln sets out to dismantle the Italian mob and take over the city piece by piece. It's a classic revenge story, but the setting, characters, and attention to historical detail give it way more flavor than it has any right to. The time period is one of Mafia 3's biggest strengths. The game doesn't shy away from the racism, violence, and politics of the era. The inequality in New Bordeaux is front and center. How fast the police respond to the mayhem you cause varies if you're in a more affluent white neighborhood or a rundown ghetto. Radio stations frequently feature news bulletins about the civil rights movement, Vietnam, and more. The atmosphere is thick with tension, and that grit and realism help ground Lincoln's story in a way that feels genuinely impactful. As for Lincoln, I think he's a great lead. Focused, calculating, but driven by a real sense of justice and rage. Still, he's personable, has a great dynamic with his war buddy Donovan, avoids getting civilians caught in the crossfire of his revenge, and even shows his enemies sympathy at times. Mafia 3 asks, what side of Lincoln is the real Lincoln? Is he a good man hardened by his harsh life? Is he just as bad as those he hunts? Or was he always a monster? His military background gives him a brutal efficiency in combat, and his relationships with his underbosses, Cassandra, Burke, and Vito, give you a lot of flexibility in how you build your criminal empire. You assign territories, decide who gets what, and they can turn on you if they're not given their fair share. The gameplay loop is where things start to stumble. A lot of people complain that Mafia 3 is painfully repetitive, and yeah, there is some truth to that. You'll spend a lot of time clearing out rackets, interrogating lieutenants, and doing the same basic objectives over and over to weaken the mob's hold on each district. Maybe I'm a little too lenient, but I don't think it's that bad. There's some variety to the missions you need to complete, and you have the freedom to go after districts in any order. The combat is satisfying, the stealth works well enough, and the structure gives you a reason to explore the map and chip away at the enemy's control. Where the game really falls short as a GTA alternative is its open world. Despite the massive map, New Bordeaux feels weirdly empty. Aside from some street races that were added post-launch, a handful of optional missions, and the DLC content, there just isn't much to do outside the main story. You won't find dynamic events, compelling side quests, or random mayhem like you get in GTA 5. Once you've taken over a district, it just kinda sits there. It's a shame because the world itself looks amazing. The lighting, weather, and architecture really sell the vibe of a 1960s southern city. But once the campaign is over, there's not much incentive to stick around. It feels like the developers built this incredibly rich world but didn't have time or budget to fill it with things to actually do. I would have loved to see the devs give it another shot and improve on New Bordeaux's shortcomings, but the upcoming Mafia: The Old Country sticks closer to the action-adventure, semi-open world of the first two games, which honestly might be for the best. Still, I think Mafia 3 is worth playing for the story alone. This is probably the most divisive recommendation on this list. I was in the same camp as a lot of others when it first released, and just didn't like it. But when I revisited it last year for my review, I was surprised my opinion of it took a full 180. Patches, post-launch updates, and DLC did a lot of heavy lifting to bring up Mafia 3's quality. I can't promise it's enough if you hated the game when it was released, but if you have the time, give it another chance. You might walk away surprised like I did. This next one might raise a few eyebrows, because I didn't even think to include Cyberpunk 2077 on this list at first. It always felt like its own thing, some kind of hybrid between an RPG, an FPS, and a futuristic, character-driven story. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized that, technically speaking, it checks off nearly every GTA-like box. Massive open world, check. Driving, shooting, and tons of side content, yup. Customization and optional missions, absolutely. So yeah, while it plays and feels very different from something like GTA 5, I think it earns its place in this conversation. I'm sure we're all aware that Cyberpunk 2077 didn't make a great first impression when it was released in 2020. I was one of the lucky few who could actually play it without the game falling apart every 5 minutes. Still had plenty of bugs, of course, but even then it was clear that the final product didn't match what had been promised. Whole systems were missing or underdeveloped, the AI was laughable, glitches were everywhere, and yeah, it stung. This was a game that had been hyped up for years, and it just wasn't ready. I was disappointed for sure, but I still walked away from that first playthrough feeling oddly satisfied. Beneath the bugs and the broken promises, there was something special there. Fast forward 5 years and Cyberpunk 2077 is a completely different experience. CD Projekt Red stuck with it, releasing patch after patch, and eventually delivered a reworked version of the game that fixed most of the core issues. The release of the Phantom Liberty expansion took things even further. That DLC is arguably one of the best standalone expansions I've ever played. Between the added mechanics, the new storyline, and all the general improvements across the board, Cyberpunk 2077 has gone from a broken disappointment to arguably one of the best games of this generation. Set in the futuristic crime-ridden metropolis of Night City, you play as V, a mercenary trying to make a name for themselves. You can choose their gender, appearance, background. Cyberpunk 2077 letting you shape the type of person you want them to be. V's story centers on a botched job that leaves them with a prototype chip in their head containing the digitized ghost of rock star turned terrorist Johnny Silverhand, played by Keanu Reeves. As the two try to work together to avoid Johnny's mind overriding V's, you're pulled into a sprawling narrative full of corporate corruption, conspiracy theories, and gang warfare. It's surprisingly emotional too. The writing leans heavily into themes like identity, mortality, and what it means to be human in a world where everyone is so heavily cyberized. Gameplay is a mix of shooting, hacking, stealth with RPG elements. You can approach missions in dozens of different ways, which gives it more depth than more GTA-like games. The driving is pretty solid, and Night City is one of the most visually dense and immersive environments I've explored in a video game. It stands above other crime box sims because of just how many options you're given to shape B's character, their relationships with others, branching storylines, and multiple endings that determines B's ultimate fate. Cyberpunk 2077 has come a long way since its disastrous launch, and it's easily my favorite game out of every title mentioned in this video. Honestly, I'm itching to do a long retrospective on it, but it's a very intimidating game to approach and cover properly, and it would probably take me an entire year to get done. But I'll be honest, it's not one you can approach the same way you'd play GTA 5. It's slower, more methodical, and requires a little patience. The systems run deeper and the world asks you to live in it rather than just blow it up. That might not be for everyone, but if you give it a shot, it's an experience that sticks with you. I strongly recommend it, not just as a GTA alternative, but as one of the most rewarding open-world games this generation has seen. And finally, the most recently released GTA alternative, Saints Row 2022. When the reboot was first announced, I was cautiously optimistic. Out of every GTA clone that came and went, the Saints Row series was the one that carved out its own niche. The early games were known for blending open-world mayhem with gang politics and character customization that could go off the rails, so the idea of a fresh start for the series? Yeah, that had potential. But the more we saw, the more that early hype just fizzled out. Every new trailer made it clear that it wasn't going to be a return to the gritty, street-level crime drama of Saints Row 1 or 2. Instead, it leaned hard into the goofier vibe of Saints Row the 3rd, and even then, it didn't really land. The gameplay looked rough, the writing felt off, and the new crew of characters felt like they were designed in a lab to be as inoffensive as possible. They weren't fun, they weren't edgy, and worst of all, they were boring. The story itself didn't do the game any favors either. It came off bland and aimless, lacking the punch or humor the series was known for. Longtime fans didn't find much to latch onto, and new players didn't seem too impressed either. The only real compliment anyone seemed able to give the game was that the open world itself, Santo Leso, was actually kinda decent. The city had some personality, a few good activities, and a nice sense of scale. But that's not enough to carry a game in a series known for its wild tone and over-the-top gameplay. Needless to say, it failed to live up to the legacy of the original Saints Row games. As a GTA alternative, it missed the mark entirely. It didn't push the envelope in any new direction, and it didn't do justice to what came before it either. Honestly, I had no plans to cover it. I figured my job was done with the Saints Row series once I wrapped up with the first 3 games, but time softened things a bit, and curiosity has started to creep in. I never got around to Saints Row 4 or Get Out of Hell, and now with the reboots sitting there, maybe it's time to finally take a look. I can't promise I'll love it, but hey, maybe the series still has a few surprises left. Either way, don't be shocked if Saints Row pops up on the channel again sometime soon. Before we wrap things up, I want to throw out a few honorable mentions. Saints Row the 3rd technically came out a couple years before GTA 5, but it did get a remaster in 2020 that gave it a nice visual upgrade. Still a ridiculous, over-the-top sandbox that's worth revisiting. Then there's Maniac and Precinct, 2 indie projects that throw it way back to GTA's 2D roots. They don't try to compete with Rockstar's scope, but they do capture the spirit of old-school crime games in a fun, nostalgic way. Debated throwing Mind's Eye on this list for shits and giggles, but the developers outright said the game was closer to Mafia 1 and 2 than it was GTA, and this was way before its disastrous launch. If there are games I miss you think fit as a modern GTA alternative, let me know in the comments. So that brings us back to the big question I asked at the start of the video. Where are the GTA alternatives, and what's the best one in 2025? Honestly, I don't think there's a clear, definitive answer to either of those. There's a decent variety out there, but which game stands out most really comes down to what you want. Are you after strong characters and story? Maybe Mafia 3. Do you want a tighter, punchier open world with good combat? Sleeping Dogs. Something totally different that still fits the formula? Cyberpunk 2077. There's no single best, just the one that clicks with you. As for why no other series has truly stepped in to fill the void between GTA 5 and GTA 6, well, it's a mix of things. First, GTA Online has been running non-stop for over a decade with constant updates, so any game that tries to enter the ring gets overshadowed before it even has a chance. Second, game development these days is expensive and time-consuming. Trying to build a GTA-scale game is a massive gamble, and with GTA being the undisputed king of this genre, since GTA 3 dropped in 2001, most studios would rather avoid the comparison entirely than risk falling short. But let me throw one more question your way. Do we even need a GTA alternative? Like, if you're not a huge fan of GTA 5, you could always go back to GTA 4 or even the PS2 trilogy. Those games are still great and all have their own personality. Or you could just play something else entirely while waiting for GTA 6. So what's the point in chasing something new? Well, I think we do need alternatives. GTA needs competition. Without it, Rockstar can get complacent. They start avoiding risk, leaning hard on what's worked before, and lose the drive to push the boundaries. Just look at what's happened with other genre giants like Call of Duty or Pokemon. When there's no serious competition, innovation starts to fade. We've already seen glimpses of that with GTA 5 and even Red Dead Redemption 2, where the games become so scripted they practically play themselves. The freedom that made those sandboxes great, it's slowly getting boxed in. I'm sure GTA 6 is going to blow minds when it drops in 2026. It'll break sales records, win all the awards, probably take Game of the Year. But if Rockstar gets too caught up in graphical fidelity and building up a super dense open world, so much so that the game ends up capped at 30 FPS on consoles, only to deliver the same old mission structure we've been playing for over a decade, that's going to be disappointing. But it's way too early to be all doom and gloom. Story and mission structure aside, Rockstar still knows how to craft an excellent open world that's dense with content, and avoids the pitfalls of modern open world games. GTA 6 will be fine. Just wish I had a nice alternative to play in the meantime. And that's the video. Thanks for watching, folks. And special thanks to my channel members and patrons, including Alfred Correa, Augie Doggy, Bailey Morrison, Brad Taylor, Eric Lee, Gonkdroid the Critic, Skillfuse, SR Powa, Thunder Muffin, and Reckless Nerd. If you would like to support the channel, you could do so for as low as $3 a month, which will give you early access, ad-free videos, and occasionally uncut videos when I'm forced to censor things for YouTube. Higher tiers will land your name in the credits, or a verbal shoutout. I wanted to try something a little different from my usual content, and I've had this idea sitting in the back of my head for ages now. Going forward, in between my usual long retrospectives, I want to experiment and do videos that cover a specific topic, or lets me look at multiple games at once. It'll be a nice change of pace and will hopefully let me squeeze in an extra video or two each month without sacrificing the quality of the bigger videos. Next vid is on the Saboteur, which should hopefully be out in a couple days. From there I have some ideas for August. Yakuza 2 is the big video for the month, but I haven't decided yet what else I want to cover yet. Mafia, the Old Country is out in a few weeks and I definitely want to review it for the channel. So we'll see how it goes, and I'll touch base in a community post once I've got everything sorted. Again, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and comment down below with your thoughts. Which GTA like is your favorite? Is there a game or series I missed that you think fit the bill? Or do you have any ideas for future video topics like this? Let me know. We're slowly inching towards 100k subs and that glorious silver plaque this year. So if you're new to the channel, I'd love it if you subscribed. I'm Pussy Slippers, and I'll see you later. Peace.